Yo, what's up guys, it's Talon. If you don't know me, I've been rank 1 in Wild Rift all solo queue. I've been a 5-role sovereign on 5 different accounts, all solo queue, and today I'm going to be talking about playing from ahead. I'm going to be going over these key points that you see here, and this is going to apply to every role. Regardless of which role you're playing, understanding these different concepts and how they apply to you is absolutely crucial for winning more games from ahead and, stopping your random throws. Additionally, Google Doc, link in the description below, gives you information on all of the key concepts you need to understand for Wild Rift, such as playing from ahead, and it gives you videos associated with them, linked right there so that you can watch and improve overall. Lastly, my coaching is also linked in the description, information on that. So if you're interested in getting coached by a rank 1 player, DM me on Discord and whatnot. And anyways, let's get right into the video. So when you have a lead, especially in a role like ADC or mid or any really carry role like those two, you want to use your lead to get prio and then use your prio to make plays around turrets across the map. You don't need to feel chained to your lane. Very often the best way to continue playing from ahead is to focus your energy on these outer turrets that are killable. So usually getting the top lane or bottom lane outer turrets. Those are the easiest turrets to take. And when you have a lead, naturally your presence is going to at least get you prio, if not give you enough ability to take the turrets. And so you're going to see what we're going to do first here is the fact that we're stronger means we can very easily get on the mid wave first. If the enemy do step to us on the mid wave, you see we're very easily able to literally walk at them and kill them because of how much stronger we are. And if not, then they'll respect us. So basically we're using that early prio to, again, pressure the enemy off or kill them if they don't respect us. And then you're going to see in a little bit after we continue chasing this fight, because we see an opportunity to fight, we use the fact that we now got mid prio and pressure from mid to go into the bottom lane. First, we're looking into the jungle to see if we can take their jungle, and then we're looking into the bottom lane to play around the turrets. So basically use your pressure from one lane to then eventually go into another lane, and then use the fact that you get into that lane first to then take the wave, take potentially jungle camps, take as many resources as possible, and eventually end up getting turrets. And then again, understanding how much pressure you have as a champion. So even here you're going to see, after we do see that Lucian's top side, I think it'll be after, basically right here, we see that Lucian's top side, we see that Twisted Fate looks potentially able to be caught. We end up going into the bottom side and continuing to push our lead onto their turret, and even getting a tier 2 turret here. So again, basically all you see here is a very, very simple concept, but it's that you want to use your prio to make plays. When you're ahead, you don't need to be forcing random plays for no reason. You force plays once you have map control, once you have pressure, once you kind of pressure the enemy off. And then because we're so strong and because I have all my resources, you see how I'm not really actually scared of the enemy here. Like, I know where half of them are. We got out their resources, and if they ever try to kill me, I have more than enough resources to deal with that. And so we continue to understand our strength and use that strength for the turret. But then once we get the turret, we're definitely backing off. The enemy are engaging on us to some extent because we're trying to poke them out still. Maybe a little over aggressive, honestly, but you can see because we have those resources to survive, we're able to continue to kite back and actually end up winning this fight. Again, just because of how strong we are. So yeah, basically those are the two main concepts. Use the prio to make plays, and then don't feel stuck to one side of the map. Use your pressure across the map to get turrets all around the map like we did in this situation. So when you're ahead in a game, your main concerns are controlling the key objective and mid wave more than anything else. Of course, getting prio everywhere is important. Having control over all of the waves is important. But more than anything else, you want to control the mid wave. And again, this doesn't just relate to ADC. This relates to a jungler hovering. This relates to a support hovering mid. This relates to a top laner pushing out their side lane so they can then hover mid. All of your plays want to be more around even numbers. So a very easy way to create even numbers is to have the fight revolve around the key objectives. And so when you know an objective is spawning, and that's really the thing you're worried about, using mid control to get into that objective first, to have control over that objective, to have control over the river around the objective, the bushes around the objective, all of that makes it very hard for the enemy to ever walk up to you. And again, you see if they walk on the mid wave like this, we're able to win this fight. And again, look at it. It's not just me doing this, right? Like, we can see top wave gets pushed out because my teammates have pressure. Honestly, bot wave could have been pushed out by my mid laner if they had better macro, instead of Renekton and Ryze being both top. But either way, you see they're using side lane pressure as the side laners, like the mid laner and the top laner, to rotate into mid and then use that prio to then get control over mid. And that mid control is, again, what leads to the objective control over Baron. So it's a whole team thing, and it's even my Milio just hovering here, my jungler coming to hover from top side as well. So the entire team is playing around the fact that we have a lead and using our numbers advantage to our advantage, which is again why we end up winning this fight and why we end up getting the Baron. This clip is a very simple one, but it shows a very important concept when playing from ahead. And basically that's using, again, prio to move elsewhere. And so I want you to see how I'm constantly able to be all around the map because of the fact that I am ahead, but I'm not forcing random fights all the time. So there's a difference between forcing a bunch of fights and getting prio and then reacting accordingly. So again, really what I want you to understand here is how well I move across the map here. So initially there's a top lane wave here. I'm the mid laner of this game. I'm Jace, but I'm playing mid lane. Initially, we just simply cover the top lane as our teammates are elsewhere, making sure that lanes are covered. What this does is it makes it a lot harder for enemy to get gold bounties. Protecting your turrets and your gold bounties is super, super important. So keeping those waves pushed out is definitely something you want to be aware of. Bot lane potentially could have been pushed out earlier because we did lose that. But basically, again, we go topside. We get the waves on topside. We use the fact that since we're stronger, we're able to get the waves pushing into their side of the map to then go into the mid lane. And then because, again, we have the pressure in mid lane, even if I take some damage from the Ahri here, I'm strong enough that I can always be the one getting the pressure, ultimately. So I'm not actually that worried about taking a little bit of damage sometimes. Obviously, you don't want to take damage, but it's not the end of the world. We have fruit, we have whatever. And then we use the fact that we push the mid first to get into bot. And so you can see pretty much every play I make. I'm topside, I push, Jax has to go there after me, which means I get to go mid before Jax gets to go mid. I go mid, I push harder than Ahri because I'm stronger than Ahri. Now Ahri's stuck in mid while I get to go bot side. And ultimately now I'm in bot side. Here, having proper awareness of bushes is very, very important. So notice how I didn't know where the enemy were on the map. I knew it was very likely they were going to cover from that area. And so we have the awareness, we cue that, make sure that we don't get caught randomly. Very, very risk adverse. You don't want to be jumping into random bushes or looking for these, overforced plays. But then once you do see that the enemy have overextended their resources, you can take advantage of the fact that you're a lot stronger to do something. So the enemy forced in mid lane, for example, and the reason that this mid lane play works out really well is because Jax was drawn bot side initially to me. So I used, again, my pressure, my map control to force the enemy to go to me. And then when I see a play now happening mid where my teammate's going to have numbers advantage because my jungle gets to be there first since we pushed out the waves and basically my team constantly gets to make the plays first, I now use the fact that Jax is very likely going to go mid to go and create a solo kill onto Jax. So it's this constant use of pressure to create a numbers advantage somewhere and to get somewhere first. And then when the enemy end up, again, giving you, when you have enough information, basically, like I did there, you then go for your moment. Whereas I didn't go for the solo kill on set earlier because Jax was not yet showing. There wasn't a play going in mid. So you really want to synchronize with your team well and not make these super, super risky plays. Just make these consistent plays, get the lanes pushed out. And then once you have all the information at your disposal, you're going to make a lot more, plays. Whereas when you're behind, and I'll have a video on being behind as well. When you're behind, it's a lot more about, forcing these plays sort of not, stupidly, but you can take a bit more risky plays in these certain moments. But again, we'll kind of have a video on that as well, so I won't go too much more into that. The main thing I want you to take away from that is the fact that we use prio from one lane to get prio in another lane to continue to have pressure across the map, and that pressure across the map means that we have more information, and then we act upon that information. When the enemy put too many resources in one side, for example, and they put more resources mid, we force that fight in that 1v1 on set, but we don't overforce before we have all of that information. Oftentimes when people are ahead in games, I feel like they feel the need to overforce fights. And so in this game, it's a very common Baron lane experience where your teammates are ahead or behind, depending on, but in this case ahead, and you want to try to do a lot as a Baron laner because sometimes your teammates will throw, and you're going to see soon they're going to kind of throw a little bit and have a random, death. But what I want to talk about is, again, just don't feel the need to overforce these types of things in any role, but Baron lane again kind of exemplifies this very well. If the game's progressing naturally pretty well, you're winning your fights in the side lane, you outscale your side laner, your teammates are generally doing well, don't panic because a fight or two goes slightly wrong. My team still has, like a 2 or 3k gold lead at this point. I'm outscaling, I'm getting item, I have gold lead here, like I have like a 1k gold lead I think at this point. All I'm doing is I'm just playing the natural 1v1 as it's meant to be played. So what you want, again, when you're ahead is you want numbers to be even across the map. You want a 1v1 and a 4v4. You want a 2v2 and a 3v3. Why do you want numbers to be even across the map? Well, that's because if you're ahead as a team and everyone continues to just, play the game normally in their normal lanes, you're probably going to win across the map. I was winning Baron lane here, even though I don't have a kill. We're ahead in gold and we're in a good matchup. My teammates are winning their fights. Let the game progress naturally. Don't do anything crazy. Grab a mid wave when your teammate decides to go fight. Like here, like I'm just grabbing the mid wave because My teammates are deciding to fight. And every once in a while, your teammates, again, when you're ahead, like, they will die randomly. Like, you're going to see here, you know, the fight goes quite poorly. And obviously, I'm seeing, like, can I really go? And turns out, you know, at the end, we can't really go or do anything. But we see if we can go. But, again, we're not over worried about it. Like, we're not trying to force something stupid. We don't need to salvage every play. Let the game progress naturally and then fight around those key objectives when it actually matters. When your teammates take those random fights, like, my teammates died there. They're going to lose a turret and some shutdowns. We don't, like, lose the game off it just because they died, because there's no objective. There's no Baron up. There's no Elder. There's nothing that really matters from them dying. So I'm just continuing to focus on controlling mid. In this case, I didn't need to control bot or push bot because Malphite's not really a split pusher I'm worried about. If I was against, like, a Jax, I would have been more concerned with the side lane, for example. But all we're doing is we're just letting the game progress naturally. We push our mid wave. We're calm about it. We're sitting in a 1v1, just hitting the Malphite earlier on. I don't need to overforce these random fights. Malphite ults into the air because, you know, why not? And then we just play the fight completely normally. So basically all I want you guys to take away from this clip, and it's genuinely the most important thing to understand about playing from ahead, is when you're ahead, do what's been getting you ahead. Stay in that 1v1, continue to play that 1v1 out, let your team continue to win the fights. Maybe they're going to die every once in a while, maybe they'll make a mistake, but if those mistakes aren't around the key objectives, it's fine. And then when the key objectives are coming up, that's when you decide to get involved. Again, this is a Baron lane perspective, but it's exactly the same for anyone. If I'm an ADC, I've been farming well and my teammates are making a bunch of plays topside, let them continue to make those plays, continue to farm up and get that safety net, so if your teammates do int one time, you have items, you're strong, and then again, just continue to let the game progress naturally, play around the normal objectives, play consistent fights, and keep numbers even across the map when you are ahead. A key difference between playing from ahead and behind is when you're ahead, you have a lot of options. When you're behind, you have a very narrow win condition. And so when you are ahead, you need to think to yourself, what is that narrow win condition for the enemy? Like, for example, maybe the enemy have one really fed carry and everyone else on the enemy team is quite behind. For example, this game, it's not like we're ahead a million gold. The enemy have a fed Xayah with a Melio. The rest of the enemy are not doing very well, but the fed Xayah Melio are completely a realistic, you know, champion duo that can carry the game. And so you need to identify that narrow win condition that the enemy have and then do what you can to shut them down. But I want you to notice in this fight, I'm going to be ulting Melio, not Xayah. Why is that? Because Xayah has ult, Xayah has Melio Veil, Xayah has Bloodthirster, Xayah is super strong, and I'm building magic resist because the enemy have a lot of magic damage. And so instead I go on Melio. I realize that my function, the way I can make this game, you know, winnable, is by ulting Melio. Obviously, initially we catch out the Malphite, but notice here again, I don't flash onto the Xayah and try to kill her there. I focus the Melio because this makes her way more weak, and Melio doesn't have a way to protect herself. Xayah does have a way to protect herself. And because the Melio's out of the picture, my team's able to play the fight well. We're able to kill Melio, and even though that was honestly really unfortunate because our Kha'Zix just jumped in and died early on in the fight, we're still able to win because we're stronger. We have many, many win conditions. We're not reliant on just Kha'Zix, who is fed, playing super well. We also have a mega fed Mordekaiser compared to the enemy. We have a Kayle who's doing extremely well and scaling well. We have so many win conditions, so we don't have to put all our eggs in one basket, but we do have to understand the enemy have to put all their eggs in one basket, and so you have to ask yourself, what can you do to take the eggs out of the basket? I don't know, this metaphor, analogy, or whatever is getting kind of weird. You get the point though. Find the enemy win condition and then do whatever you can to shut that single win condition down. Playing from ahead doesn't just mean that you're ahead. This is a situation where I am behind, but my team's actually ahead a lot, and we made a throw earlier, so we were ahead a lot more. And then they got Baron, the enemy, and it kind of went south a bit, but we're still ahead in this game overall. We have 2 dragons, we're up a couple thousand gold, and my team is doing really well. So the reason we weren't able to win these fights earlier is because the enemy have a Shen Baron lane. I was doing quite poorly this game, and every time I would essentially go on side lane, Shen would fight me a bit, and then he would TP and it would create a numbers advantage. So what I want to talk about here again is numbers advantages. Very often you'll see a game is going well early on. Baron lane's a great example, but again, any role can have this happen. And then suddenly numbers disadvantages start to change things. So here I over-focused on split pushing as Fiora. I let Shen very often join the fights, and then my team would lose the fights, even though I'm not the one who matters. Like if I go to this team fight, it's not that I'm going to carry the team fight, but it's that I'm going to be able to take a member out of the fight and give my team an even 4v4 as I target, for example, the enemy ADC, or I target, you know, a tank, or I do something. And so oftentimes you need to understand, again, these numbers being even is really what makes these fights won. So you don't want to give the enemy a chance for a 5v4 for you to just go for a 1v0 on the turret. I mean, every once in a while, if you can like get an inhib or something, like it's not always bad. But again, notice like all that matters in this fight is my presence, because the fact that I'm here, that leads to the Jhin dying, which means my team is very easily able to win the fight. Not because I'm the one carrying this fight. The fact that my team is fed is why we won this fight. But again, if I'm not there, my team's going to lose a 5v4 without me, you know, like, so just understanding when your presence is required and making sure that you try to create these even numbers rather than, again, trying to just constantly side lane in a game like this. Whereas the times where you're going to want to side lane or where you're going to want to create, you know, odd numbers are going to be when you're behind, when going to a team fight in the 5v5 has not been working for you. But if something's been working, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if your team's been winning fights with even numbers, continue to give them those even numbers. And then maybe a fight, you know, you realize that the things are starting to swing in the other direction, the enemy are starting to win. Okay, then maybe now you're going to need to rely on side laning or something else, because clearly that team fighting is no longer working. But basically, again, the gist of this is you want those even numbers within fights. And when you realize that we were winning and then suddenly we're losing, you got to think to yourself, what's happening? And in this case, it was, again, the Shen was getting to those fights before me because of his ultimate, and so I had to find a way to get to those fights on time. By getting to the fight on time, we were able to have the even numbers and win the fight because we were ahead. There's a super simple message from this, and it's just take away as much as you can after a one fight, and also reset before the enemy respawn. So we win a fight here. Instead of just grabbing this wave and recalling, we're gonna go push for more. Two of the enemy are dead, someone's showing mid, two people are showing mid. There could only ever be one person here, so we're going to, after winning the fight, take their jungle camps. Then we're going to use our Herald to get tier 2, but then we'll reset after that. And the reason is because the enemy are starting to respawn. So we don't want to overforce, you don't want to overextend and stay up on the map without, you know, spending your gold and without all of that. But before the enemy respawn, you need to take as much advantage of that time you have on the map where you have that numbers advantage. Take the waves, take the camps, take the turrets, and then make sure you're resetting in time, spending that gold and not overextending. Understanding how to play around key objectives when you are ahead is extremely important. You don't want to do what we call flipping an objective, which is basically taking the 50-50 on the smite and hoping that you hit it when you're ahead. Because when you're ahead, if the game again progresses naturally, you're going to win the game. So trying to randomly take a flip on a smite where it's a 50-50, maybe I hit the smite, maybe I don't, very, very unnecessary when you already had, say, a 70-80% chance of winning the game because you were ahead. Instead, you want to use the fact that you're ahead to create pressure around the Baron, make them think you're doing it, hover the Baron, constantly value the Baron or the Elder or whatever key objective is up. But don't get it so low that you're taking a 50-50 smite fight on it. Instead, again, notice how constantly throughout this time we're focused around the Baron, but we're not just like flipping it randomly. And you're going to see eventually I will actually make the mistake of it, which is a good chance to show the mistake as well. But again, we're just constantly valuing finding picks around this Baron. I'm not spending my time on the opposite side of the map where it's, you know, a lot less things are going to happen where there's no objective. We're just forcing these fights around the Baron and using the Baron to bait, or using the Baron as a bait to find fights. But then what you're going to see here is we use our advantage and we get a bit over eager eventually to kind of start hitting the Baron, and basically this is where the things sort of go negative. So initially we're looking for the fight, kind of go too far up here, honestly. As you're going to see, initially the teammates start hitting it, and then again there's no real reason to hit the Baron. It gets you low, it reduces your resistances, and that's how you're going to throw the game. Whereas again, just forcing these fights around the objectives, and because you're ahead, that's how you're going to end up winning the game. And so that's, you see what we do, you know, a good job of here. But then the problem is that we try to do the Baron despite being low health. And again, just these risky flips around Baron. This is how you throw games when you're ahead. And you're going to see we do it despite me being low, despite their jungler being alive. Obviously, if their jungler's not alive, it's different. And they have a bunch of, you know, ways to kind of kill us. And so then we back off too late, and then Talon gets it. And that's really where like a throw happens. I mean, I think we still won this game if I remember correctly. But that's a very, very common way where you're going to be throwing games when you are ahead, is through these random flips. So again, basically the point is use objectives as a means to fight, not flipping the objectives when you're ahead. That's it for the clips. I have a few closing kind of thoughts here that I really want to mention. And again, playing from ahead, ultimately it's about doing what was working. So the fact that you were winning these fights early means you need to continue having that. You need to continue having even numbers across the map so the enemy can't have, you know, a random advantage somewhere where they're able to get a shutdown. Because the enemy winning a fight on one side of the map and you winning a fight on the different side of the map when they're behind is better for them because of gold bounties, because of shutdowns and whatnot. So you don't want to be doing that. You want to be, again, using your pressure to get prio, and then using your prio to create even numbered or advantage numbered fights where the enemy can't respond elsewhere. And just overall, again, if the game is progressing in a suitable way, in a way that you want, to continue happening, do what you continued doing, which is usually, again, going to be continuing, for example, like in that Mordekaiser example, sitting on the side lane, fighting him, fighting the Malphite, letting my team 4v4, and then just showing up to objectives, showing up to those key fights, and just overall have a more risk-adverse playstyle when you're ahead. You don't need to be, over-forcing your lead. You're already ahead. Continue to use that lead in a smart way, get prio, and use that prio to force key objectives rather than forcing random fights over nothing. Other than that, I just hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you want to like or subscribe or whatever, I'd appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.